If you're looking for homeschool sanity, welcome. I'm Dr. Melanie Wilson, Christian psychologist turned homeschool mom and curriculum author. But I was once so disorganized, I thought I had to quit homeschooling and stop having kids. Now, by the grace of God, I have 6 homeschool graduates. Whether we're discussing parenting, productivity, or practical tips, I pray that this episode is just what you need for happy, healthy homeschooling. Why does music matter in home education? Is it just so we can have juniors show off for grandparents at recitals? Is it just a nice elective to fill out the kids' transcript? Or is it an underappreciated medium for the development of multiple skills? That's what I'll discuss with my guest, Adrian Edwards. Before I introduce Adrian, I want to thank Now Programs for sponsoring this episode of the Homeschool Sanity Show. I met Adrian the way I meet many of my podcast guests and eventual friends at a Great Homeschool Convention. One of the first things I noticed about Adrian and his wife Maria was how much friends who greeted them at their booth loved them, like adored them. After seeing him at 5 conventions, I realized it's because that's how much they love other people. They have both made me feel special. But that's not all they have going for them. Their Color Me Mozart materials are ingenious and professional. I can't wait to use them with future grandchildren. Adrian is a music educator, but it was during his work at the Guild for Exceptional Children in Brooklyn that he saw just how powerful music could be, especially for children with special needs. But he also noticed a troubling truth. In many early education programs, music was treated as an afterthought. Adrian set out to change that. Through innovative teaching methods and a deep belief that music should be accessible to every child, Adrian has helped families and educators bring joy, connection, and growth into their homes and classrooms, whether their children are neurotypical or have special needs. Here's my chat with Adrian. Adrian, I am so excited to have you here on the Homeschool Sanity Show. We met during, was it in the South Carolina Great Homeschool Convention?
I believe it was. Yeah, it was the first
Okay.
one of the year. Yeah.
Okay. And we have gotten to talk about all things homeschool publishing and
Mhm.
social media since then. And I've gotten to meet your lovely wife as well. But I hope before we dive into the topic of music education that you can tell us a little bit more about you.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, Melly, thank you so much for having me on the show. And it's so funny because you might not know her, but Amanda Grantham, she's one of our friends here in Hampstead. She's a huge fan of yours. And when I told her I'm going to be on Melanie Wilson's podcast. She goes, "What?" She lost her mind. So you already have fans here in Hampstead that love you to death. So
Oh,
and by proxy, I looked really cool. So it was great for me. So I'm grateful for that. But no,
well,
thank you
I
so much
love
for
it.
having me. And yeah, like, my name is Adrian Edward, and quick biography about myself. I was born originally in Argentina, but grew up in Brooklyn, out of all places, and then met my lovely wife there. And since then, we got married, and we moved to beautiful North Carolina. And I've been teaching music for about 30 years, musician since I was a teenager. Became a music therapist for a preschool, special needs preschool for 10 years, which was life changing. We could talk about that a little bit later because just one of the kind of the most joyous parts of my life that kind of God brought in my life. Got to teach at the collegiate school in New York City, which was wonderful. And about 10 years ago, from that preschool experience, I created my own company, focusing specifically on preschool children and homeschool families. So I'm really, really excited about that, just where the music journey has taken me.
Yes, and I've gotten to meet your lovely wife, Maria. And I honestly, when I tell people like my husband about meeting you and Maria, I just say, you really have to meet them. They're just amazing. when
So
when
sweet.
you when you meet someone who in my opinion, when they're full of the Holy Spirit, you just know. And
Amen.
that is how I felt about meeting you and Maria, and I just feel it's a privilege to get to know you.
Oh, and sorry, and I have to return it just because my wife and I talk about you so often, and I just have to let your viewers know something that you did, which you're gonna get embarrassed. I have to tell them. But we were in Missouri, and we ran, which was a great problem. We ran out of flyers, and then we went to share that great news because it was still good news, even though we ran out of flyers. And what do you tell us? Oh, give me one of your flyers. I'll bring it from flyer. Who does that? Who does that? And you next day you show up with flyers. Anyway, just to say we feel exactly the same, and God's so good that way because we've been able to share that kind of testimony when we get home. It's like God's been amazing, like just bringing such amazing people, and that includes you, and we're really grateful for that. We know none of that is an accident. It's God just reminding us, you know what, I'm with you, and I'm gonna keep you surrounded by people that love me, love Him, and so we're really grateful for you too. So thank you for that.
That's wonderful. I mean, I think if you're watching or listening, you can just tell why I love Adrian, and you'll just have to take our word for it that Maria is incredible.
Yes, she's pretty
Yes.
amazing.
Okay, so you were inspired to start your company, Color Me Mozart, and you've given us a little bit of background about why you wanted to start it. But can you tell us more about what gap you saw in early childhood music education or just education in general that you were hoping to fill through music?
Absolutely. So it's funny because I've always loved to learn. Like my dad was a big learner, and we just always talked. He was a painter, and so it was there always talks about art and how things worked and how the world worked. Like I was 10 years old having philosophical conversations with my dad. He was just that type of person, and so I always kind of looked at the world from a very even before I knew the term a growth minded mindset where like you can learn pretty much anything. You don't have to be born into it. And so when I became a music therapist at the preschool, it's a special needs preschool, I started realizing two things that really stood out to me was that the school was fantastic. It was a school in Brooklyn, but in their IEPs, which are the individualized education programs for special needs kids, there was occupational therapy, speech therapy, all these type of therapies for the kids, which were great. And my role as a music therapist was never in the IEP, which I didn't care for my ego's sake. What I didn't like about that was it was if the school had a music teacher or therapist like me, the kids would receive music. If they didn't, then they were out of luck. That's the part I didn't like. That music wasn't taken as something that was extremely beneficial or as critical as other therapies. And so what I started to do with the kids was, you know what? A lot of these kids, whether they're nonverbal, whether they have any type of developmental delays, they could still recognize basic things like shapes and colors and things like that. So I said, you know what? Let's try some of these patterns with the xylophone. Sure enough, they could, plink out these patterns on the xylophone, and just something inside me, like I was just that day, I was like, okay, there's something here, right? We need to do something with this. And I just felt like the part in my heart that broke for these kids was a lot of times when they got diagnosed at the kind of that preschool age, the expectation from them was less. And that's what kind of broke my heart, where a lot of times they might have a delay in one area, but their brains are firing on all cylinders in another area, and music happens to be one that does just that. And so I got all excited, and I'm like, all right, what can I do for these kids? So I started looking at resources. Hey, let me see curriculums that are out there. And I'm not a big fan of talking bad about other curriculums. I'll just say what wasn't available. Either it was so infantile, where it was just music and movement, which again, that's fine. That's a great thing, but it's not teaching them actual music education or language for that, the musical language. Or it was so advanced that you would need a private tutor like myself to teach them piano or music, which not every school had. So I said, wait a minute, there's got to be a way where we can take these basic concepts of what kids know and translate it for teachers that aren't necessarily music teachers. And that's where it came from. It really was out of necessity, out of there's a better way. And I'm a big fan of that. I'm a big fan of looking for a better way to do things. We get used to things sometimes where it's like, well, it's the only way. Well, that's not true. Someone always comes along and asks the question, what can we do better? And I felt like music education is so funny. I always love telling this story. A lot of the music books I use with my private students, I'm like, no joke, they're from the 50s. Like they've been printed for like 60, 70 years. And I'm like, all right. Granted, there's new things, but it's one of those things where music is education as a whole hasn't really progressed that much. And they tend to focus on older kids. I really wanted two things. One, to put it in the hands of teachers and parents that don't know music and to reach that special needs community, and also to reach kids as young as possible. Like I mentioned, I'm from Argentina. I grew up in a two language household and I'm still fluent to this day. So I attributed that. All I heard was my parents, speak to me in Spanish. They didn't have to put me in Spanish school, or we didn't have to have, grammar classes specifically for piano. It was something that I absorbed because I was exposed to that language. So that's where it all came from and was birthed from.
Well, and you are tapping into something that I wanted to ask you more about, and that is early exposure
Yep.
to music. How does that affect a child's brain development?
Yeah, so it's funny because I've been going down such rabbit holes of I even changed it on a lot of our social media bios where it's like neuroscience meets music, because there's just these amazing authors like Susan Rogers and Oliver Sacks, Daniel Levitt, and they've been kind of bringing these past few years all these amazing studies. So just to throw you out a few facts that blew my mind that will just answer that question of what it can do to a kid. So when a child is in their third trimester, still in the womb, their auditory system is developed enough that they can pick up on the intonations of a mother's voice. And that's why a child can hear 100 people in a room and still only respond to their mother's voice, which that blew my mind. Then another study by Oliver Sacks showed that between the ages of 6 months and 12 months, still very much an infant, very much a baby, the rhythms that we hear are the rhythms that we feel most comfortable with for the rest of our lives, not even for our childhood, for the rest of our lives. So at first I read that and I'm like, no, this can't be right. And then I had to admit a couple of things, which I'm embarrassed to admit on your podcast, but I'm going to admit them anyway. So my wife is from Venezuela. Again, I'm from Argentina. We do not grow up with a very dancing culture in Argentina. Even though it's a Latin country, we don't tend to dance, just regular kind of pop music dancing. But
Okay.
in Venezuela and places like Colombia, Venezuela, Puerto Rico, things like that, they very much dance. If you don't dance at a party, it's not a party. So they naturally, just like I was always so jealous because these Latin guys would just, pick up some girl from the party and dance and twirl. They never had a lesson in their life, but the rhythms make sense to them because they've been listening to those syncopated Latin rhythms since they were babies. And since I didn't, I've had to take salsa classes and I'm still very much an amateur. I have to count every beat with my feet, like one, two,
Mhm.
turn, twist, turn. And so everything, even in my own personal life, proves the fact that these neuroscientists are onto something. The fact that this early exposure to music, not a later exposure, is what really matters. And the best, most practical example I like to give in my talks is when it comes to language, mentioning before about me being fluent in Spanish, how many people do you know? I think we all know somebody that said, "Oh, I took 4 years of French or Spanish in high school." Every time I meet those people, and I genuinely get excited, I'm like, "Oh my God, that's amazing! You speak Spanish?" They're like, "No, I don't remember anything." And so it's not a knock on them. It's not a knock on their teachers. It's a knock on the fact that it was started too late. And so I went to public school. There was no music other than just singing along and stuff like that. And just every study seems to prove that exactly that. And I think our own personal experience, the earlier, the better, and a language. And I always tell parents, you wouldn't even conceive of not teaching a child how to speak, read, or write because they're too young. They won't get it. We never assume that. That's not a conversation. That would actually be child abuse. That would be like insane to think about. You clearly every language, whether they grow up in France, China, whether it's Russian, Mandarin, it doesn't matter. A child will pick up any language. And again, all these, when I sit back and I'm like, okay, that's what they write about. And the common sense is that, yeah, that's true. We've all learned a fluent language, reading, writing, and speaking when we were infants. How did that happen? Because that's exactly when we're supposed to learn language. That includes music, any language for that matter.
Well, such an important reminder. And I love the comparison to, of course, language arts and You know, we would, and really even math, you know, like parents aren't like, well, I'm not going to talk about numbers at
Right.
all until my child is at least 6 or whatever. So I do love that very powerful reminder about the importance of early musical education. So I bet that you have convinced our listeners and our viewers that they should begin introducing their kids to music even at very early ages. But what if those homeschooling parents listening to us do not have a musical background? What would you say to a parent who feels intimidated by teaching music at home?
Well, first, it's funny because that question happens so much when they come up to the table, and I've gotten so happy and used to answering that question is no parent. Well, the two things, right? Obviously, they're coming up to me and speaking their language, so we speak English, so we share that. But that parent did not have a literature degree, an English degree, or anything of the sort, or even close to that. I'm assuming, right?
Mhm.
Statistically, the chances of every parent or most parents having that type of degree is probably very, very remote. And so that still didn't make them feel any less capacitated to teach them their language, their native tongue. Again, regardless of what country that is. So I say the same thing to those parents is music, the founding blocks of music, the basic blocks of music are very similar to language, right? We have a notation system, we have an alphabet, we have very few symbols, akin to language. So as long as the building blocks are small enough, it's no less or more intimidating than teaching a child their ABCs. Is exactly the same thing. So maybe for the parent, becoming completely fluent in music obviously will take some time. However, those first beginnings, much to your point about math, yes, calculus is complicated, trigonometry is complicated, but teaching, hey, this is one apple and this is two apples, we all feel like math teachers, and so I would say the same thing. I think over the years something happened in the past, and I'm not even sure why. I haven't dove into what the reason for this is, but music instruction has become like a specialty, almost like it's regarded as like a luxury where it's like, oh no, it's an extracurricular thing that we do with our kid. I send my kid to a thing where that wasn't the case 100 years ago. You wanted music, had to be done in your own home. You had to sing along. If there was a piano in the house or any type of instrument, you had to create your own music. And so for whatever reason that's happened, and that part always bothers me because it's an activity that happens, a very special activity that happens in a young kid's life away from the family. So what I would suggest to families is you can turn, say, and I'll give some examples later on of very simple music moments that can be turned into music learning moments, even if you've never, this has nothing to do with learning how to read Beethoven or anything crazy like that. But the building blocks are a lot easier than what people believe it. The amount of people that come up to the table and go, I'm tone deaf. And I'm like, no, you're not. The Statistically, the tone deafness of the world is so minuscule that you might as well play lottery if you're tone deaf. It's that impossible. And so I always make people sing happy birthday. And of course they can sing it. Not great, but it doesn't matter. So everybody, they're not as tone deaf as they think they are.
I mean, you just raised such an important issue. And I talked to a homeschooling mom friend of mine who was told at a fairly early age that she could not sing,
Mm.
even though she wanted to. She enjoyed it. And so she just stopped.
Oh man.
And I mean, what a tragedy that is. And we don't do that with things like reading and math. We don't go, "Oh wow, you cannot read."
Right.
So better just not to even try. But unfortunately, there are some people who have this idea that you either have a musical talent or you don't. And if you don't, you shouldn't waste your time.
Right. It's heartbreaking, and you're right. I've met so many parents that was the case. It's funny in this last conference, a mom. I mean, I have to be careful how aggressive I come out to parents, because I don't want them to feel like I'm attacking them. But one mom was like, "Oh, we don't want to scare her with like putting too much pressure on her," and it just made me reflect as to what what image people have of what music is, like
Mm.
they're always like, well, I don't want to force them to practice and I don't want to force it. And I'm like, yeah, okay, the intention is correct. But to your point, we never say that about reading, right? Like, never. I've never heard a parent be like, yeah, we wanted to teach our son to read, but we just didn't want him to feel like we were like pressuring it. Like, that's insane, right? It's like if you put it in any other context, it makes such little sense that you have to laugh at it. And so, we've been trying to kind of just change the conversation about, and that's always hard, easier said than done, but change the conversation about like, hey, again, you're not teaching a kid Shakespeare from day one. You're also not teaching them to like, play Rachmaninoff. And so it's just funny. You're
Mhm.
so right about that. It's like,
I'm so glad that you shared those examples. I would never have thought that people would be thinking that way, but on the other hand, when homeschooling was first becoming more mainstream, there were plenty of examples of families where every single child in the family was a musician and the whole family was touring as a a musical group. And I think homeschooling parents were thinking, "Oh, I don't want to do that." And so it became this all or nothing
true. Yeah.
mentality. It's either we're touring as a family or we're not doing any music. And of course, that's ridiculous, as you're pointing out.
I feel like sports, from what I see,
Mm.
sports have gotten the same way too. It's like, not to do the nostalgic, oh, when I grew up, but we just went out and played a lot. I still to this day, I love playing soccer. It's something that brings me a lot of joy, but it's for the love of the game. And it's not necessarily, oh, I need to become a pro baller. Same thing with the music. And to your point, yeah, music has gotten that rap. It's either all in or nothing. And I'm like, that's not how music works at all. It could just be this wonderful addition to life that brings richness to your life that can just be enjoyed completely amateurishly, like we enjoy a lot of things, right? Like we don't all grow up to become novelists but we still love, we're still taught to think creatively and do creative writing and things like that. So I think you're right. We're on a little bit is been skewed where it's like, what's the purpose of this? If there's not this big purpose, but the purpose is that it adds a lot to your life, like art and and music and great books. Like again about reading books, we would always encourage kids read as much as you can. Why? Because it stimulates a part of your brain that otherwise would not get stimulated.
And it's just a joy.
Yes,
It's a joy, just like music
absolutely.
is. So I love the message that you have. So, do you have a success story of a child that you have worked with or who has used your curricula that you have developed, who has experienced some kind of growth as a result?
Absolutely, yeah. And so I'll switch her name. We'll call her. Well, I was going to say Maria, but my wife's Maria. We'll just
Yeah.
say Jennifer just to keep, just to protect her name. But yeah, so a couple of years back, actually at our church, we do a little school of music every year, and so I got to start teaching her about 3 years back, and she was the sweetest little girl. She loved to play. However, there was a fear inside of her. Like every time she got around other kids, she would just panic. She would just clam up and so little by little, as we started doing more and more music and started getting her in tiny groups, right? So we did this small, like mini recital for her where it was just her brother and sister. Then we expanded the next year. I invited her to a bigger group. And so music in itself, you could see there was a spark there, something that brought her joy. However, there was a part of her personality that would not let her. And I think sometimes as adults, in that case, maybe we do get too aggressive where it's like, well, just get out there, face your fears. That's great as an adult because we can monitor our emotions. But when you're young, that could be traumatizing. And so as she got more and more comfortable with herself, with her instrument, with singing, with playing, she's just blossomed. Like now she's no, so she's going to be at our school of music, which we're going to have at the end of July. And she's basically just a different little girl. It's unbelievable how music is so much her personality. Like it gives her strength and kind of permission to be who she wants to be. If she wants to sing kind of like a tough song, she pulls out Taylor Swift. If she wants to be like a happy-go-lucky song, than she does. They're from Brazil. They're so sweet. So yeah, they do some songs from Brazil. She'll do "I'm Yours" by Jason Mraz. She plays with her sister, and she'll still grumble sometimes, but it's the cutest thing because it'll be on stage, her and her brother and her sister performing together, and you could just imagine what that scene is and those memories that she's gonna have. That she probably can't even process just yet of what they're gonna mean. But it was so cute because her and her friends were here to practice the other day for the youth worship team, and I said, "Oh, have you been practicing? Because they're going to do a song for a Coldplay song." And I said, "Oh, are you going to do a Coldplay song?" She goes, "Yeah, I asked my sister to play with me, but she doesn't want to play with me." But the funny thing is that actually was a switch because normally she'd be the one that never wanted to play with her sister. Now all of a sudden she's the one that's asking her sister. So just seeing how music can be such an important part of someone's healthy personality. It gives them a chance to like express who they are. If they're feeling a certain way, they can express it through music. And just seeing the change, the radical change in her, where she would put the music stand in front of her face so no people wouldn't see her face. And just seeing her pull the music stand to the side and people wanting to see her, it's just like it just gives me chills because it's just
Oh,
seeing that change in kids' lives. Like it just reminds me of like those first few days of why I teach. And I still love to teach, to this day.
that is a wonderful story. That inspires me too. And I bet there are a lot of parents whose kids are a little bit more timid, a little bit more reluctant, for whom music could really help to draw them out.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've really been talking more philosophically so far, and I've loved it because I think it's super motivating and inspiring. But now I would like to have you share with us some practical tips or even some simple routines around music that homeschool families can start using right away.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, like our curriculum in general focuses so much on, like I said, very simple concepts, right? One of the concepts that I love is instrument recognition. Just like learning anything in life, we play I Spy in the car, I spy this, I spy a mailbox, I spy whatever, the color red, whatever it is. So, one of the simple activities, even before you start any type of musical training, is just when you're in the car, start asking your kids, hey, what instruments do you think are in this song? Something like that, right? And if you don't know the instrument, look it up, right? So it's like, I don't know what a drum set is. Oh, let's look at let's say it is a Coldplay song. So let's look at who's in Coldplay. Great, there's a singer. What is the singer using? Oh, he uses a microphone. Why does he use a microphone? Great. Oh, he's playing guitar. What type of guitar? Oh, the other one's playing a bass. The other one's playing a drum. You'd be amazed. Like, it's funny because kids love to play music guessing games. They love it. And the more obscure the instrument, the better. So if it's like that Australian didgeridoo, the one that goes, that one, they obviously they lose their minds because it sounds like the silliest sound ever. But just it's funny because I did a reel about it today. It's turning any simple music moment into a learning moment, right? So the one I did today, so that's one thing you can do was with calling out instruments, right? And what's going to happen as a parent is you're not going to know what every instrument is. Like whoever's watching or listening right now, uh, I'm assuming not everybody knows every instrument in the orchestra, right? What a piccolo is, what an oboe is, what a clarinet sounds like, what a bassoon sounds like, what the timpani sounds like, what all the four parts of the strings. You have contrabasses, you have cellos, you have violas, you have first violin. So even within the strings and the violins, there's all these details. So that could be a fun way as a family to learn more about music and just kind of take you down the road, like I mentioned before, to listen, especially to rhythms and songs that you wouldn't typically listen to. Because we all kind of do have the habit of listening to the same type of music. So that does not feed into the different rhythms. So that would be my encouragement. Listen to a lot of music, identify the instruments, and then go down those rabbit holes. Let's see what the typical music from Poland is. Let's see what a typical raga from India is. You'd be amazed at how different and awkward the rhythms feel to us. Like it's really interesting when you listen to they're called ragas from India. We're so used to 4/4, like 1, 2, 3, 4. They have stuff in 12, 11. It's just it doesn't feel right to us. So it's really important to like expose yourself and then kids to that. So that's one thing. Then the other thing that clapping is also a great idea, because even if you clap, some songs are in three, some are in six, some are in four. So even doing that little thing. So if you're listening to a song, just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, counting out loud, solidifies rhythm. Um, and then whatever, most houses have some type of instrument at home. And that's always my talking point at when people come to the conferences is you have the instrument, you can use it and it doesn't have to be that complicated. So those are practical things you can do outside in terms of if you wanted to start a curriculum like ours, or there's other curriculums out there as well, is starting those basic building blocks, but more importantly, is doing it together. This is not a plop your kid in front of the instrument, and we're trying to get parents to see that this is something you do in tandem with your child, not separate. It's not like I'll teach them a little bit and release them into the music world. No, it's you learning together with them. It's sharing that together. I know you'd be surprised how many people ask me. They're like, "Oh, but do I have to be there?" I'm like, "Well, yeah. Don't you want to be there?" It's
Well, I think it probably goes back to what we were talking about before. There are probably parents who just feel like, that ship's already sailed for me.
correct.
I'm
Yeah,
not good at it. I can't learn it. But I love that you're encouraging them to learn along with their kids and to engage in it with their kids. And I think it's going to be so much more effective in teaching your child and them having a good experience.
absolutely. And if I could say one last thing on that
Sure, of
is
course.
just so people have a clear idea of music, and it might sound like I'm being overly simplistic. It is not that complicated. It really is not. In the English alphabet, we have 26 letters. In music, we only have 7. So it's not that many letters, in the alphabet. Rhythm wise, there's not that many rhythmic kind of notations, how we notate music. Descriptions, for how fast, how slow something. There's not like thousands. It's not like a lexicon that is so complex. It is a very, very friendly language. And it's friendly because, and it's so funny, it cracks me up, like, because we don't see this in movies, but I'm hoping the parents listening to this can identify. The garage band was a big thing for me growing up, where kids just got together in a garage. So that should tell you how friendly music is to learn. When
Mhm.
teenagers can just pick up instruments and go inside of a garage and just have a blast. Do they sound like Coldplay yet? No, but you can bang out music. Music is the learning curve for music is very, very, very friendly. Just like anything in life, to take it to the professional level, but that goes for anything. Like you said before, math, simple addition is easy. Obviously, becoming, a rocket scientist is complex. So I think we just need to bridge the gap of realizing there's a difference, like you said before, I think parents have this idea of like, no, it's that ship has sailed, it's too hard for me. But I just assure everybody watching and listening, it is not in the least.
It is not. Definitely. Okay, so tell us more about Color Me Mozart. What is involved with that? What kinds of lessons are there? Yeah, just tell us how it works.
Of course, yeah. So in its kind of in its complete program, it's a 2-year homeschool curriculum for preschool age kids. So roughly that 3 to 6 age range. And again, for parents that have never done music. And the way I structured it is I modeled it after kind of a school year. So there are about 75 lessons in total. We recommend about 1 week, and they're all taught by me as if I was in the home with you. So since I've been teaching for so many years, I made sure that it's exactly what I would do. So it's got like thousands of hours of test running with kids as to the way it's structured. It's meant to be repetitive in nature in terms of not only reviewing what we're learning, but also it gives them something to expect. Like when kids watch Sesame Street, oh, hey, there's the intro song. Hey, now we're going to learn about a letter. Now we're going to meet somebody famous. So we structured it exactly the same way. So it's not just random, even though it feels kind of varied enough that you're like, oh, every lesson's new. But like I said before about the instruments and what we're learning, but it always starts with sing-alongs. Then we learn about instruments. Then we listen. Then we practice clapping patterns. Then we learn about whatever notes. And the most important part is then we actually learn how to actually start playing songs. So we always attribute each note in the beginning to a shape and a color. And what we want to do over the course of those 2 years is wean them off of that. And I should say this, the reason we start with shapes and colors is because instead of trying to bring the preschooler to where we are in our adult life, we meet them where they are. So preschoolers, on the whole, they'll know their shapes and colors. And so we wean them off over those 2 years very, very slowly, and then go morphing those shapes into traditional music notation. So by the end of 2 years, both the parent and the child will have will be able to read um, music notation in its entirety. Very simple. Again, going back to what we said about simplicity, is they'll have a very basic and solid understanding of the basic foundations of music, so that whatever, in that case, private teacher kind of inherits them after that,
Mhm.
will already have a child that knows what they're speaking. Again, they'll be like, hey, oh, this student knows how to read music already. Oh, they understand what a French horn is. Oh, they know what a trumpet sounds like. They can clap basic rhythmic patterns. And the parent, and imagine, my favorite part to share is all the beautiful memories that you get to have as parents and as a family. And then we encourage little recitals to celebrate milestones. It really is just to two things: to celebrate music and to celebrate family doing things together again, which seems to be sadly going the opposite direction with how modern life takes us away from that, between screens and things like that.
Well, Adrian, I don't have any married kids yet, and I have no grandchildren, but do you think it's too early for me to go ahead and get this for my
I
grandkids?
I don't think so. Anytime I would, in the womb, whenever they do get married,
Right.
the third trimester, just tell them that fact. Please tell them that fact.
It's going to be a baby gift. I'm telling you. I'm excited about it. Okay, so where can listeners go to learn more about Color Me Mozart and to connect with you online?
Oh, also, much like you, it's funny because between the social media and stuff like it's all centered around Color Me Mozart. So colormemozart.com for our website. Instagram is Color Me Mozart Music. We're also on YouTube as well. Pinterest. I think those are the big ones. And yeah, and they can find us if they want to write an email, Adrian at colormemozart.com. And I always like to let people know we are like a family oriented business. So we love to make sure that just people are just getting into something that they'll just treasure and have a good time. And I can pretty much guarantee that they will never. No, I've never met anyone that said, "Oh, why did we learn music?" It's not a thing people say.
No. Not at all. Well, this was a joy, and I even learned some things, and I'm super motivated about educating my future grandchildren in music and helping
I
my
love
kids to do that.
it.
So, thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us today.
Oh, of course. Thank you so much, Mel. It was such a pleasure.
To find the links to Now programs, Color Me Mozart, and Adrian's social media, visit the show notes page at homeschoolsanity.com/develop music. Have a happy homeschool week. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. I hope something you heard was encouraging. If you have a personal question to follow up, don't hesitate to message me. I'm at Homeschool Sanity on social media. Be sure to check my free resource page at homeschoolsanity.com/resource and find Sanity Saving Curriculum at funtolearnbooks.com. This has been a production of the Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network.